to another Liverpool Transfer Talk show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. In terms of the transfer rumor speculation this week, it's a little bit quieter than it has been, I guess, for the last couple of weeks. But then again, Liverpool have been one of the most active teams, especially in the Premier League. So today we will discuss 15 rumors that I feel like have been circulating or have been making a lot of noise in the social media world. And we can also have a debate in terms of if these players are suited in terms of how we play, and is there any sort of genuine interest from Liverpool in order to sign these players. So we'll start with Victor Gyökeres. Now he's a player that has been definitely been linked with a number of clubs in the recent weeks. Quite recently, betting odds have been slashed to 2-1 that he will be joining Liverpool. Now that is, I'm not a betting person, so I wouldn't know too much about it, but I've been told that that's quite a sort of a shoo-in that a player is on the verge of joining that club, which is positive news, I guess, in that regards. Um, but I think it's safe to say that Gyökeres is possibly heading to the Premier League. I know he's been linked with other teams like your Manchester United, who of course are managed by his former coach in Ruben Amorim. But in terms of the player and my thoughts on the rumor of him possibly joining Liverpool, I actually quite like the player. I think he's a lethal finisher in front of goal, and I think that's exactly the ingredient that we're lacking in the team. We have a lot of good attacking players. We've got good creativity in certain aspects of our midfield, but I feel like we've created a lot of chances last season and they weren't completed, or our strikers weren't on song to hit the back of the net. So I feel like that's definitely an area that we need to strengthen. Big question is what sort of profile is Arne Slot after, because there's no 100% indication that he's going to go for an out and out number 9. He might want to sign a striker that can drop deep and play as a false 9. That will allow the likes of Salah and potentially Florian Wirtz, if touch wood that when he completes the move, because when you've got fullbacks like Frimpong on one side and potentially Kerkez as well, that allows your sort of forwards to come a bit more inside. So I feel like that's going to be the way we set up. So it's interesting what style of striker that the coach will want going forward. He might not want an out and out number 9. He might want a player that can drop deep and allow runners go ahead of him instead of, when I say runners, I'm talking about Salah and Florian Wirtz or whoever's playing on that left side as well. So for me, it's not showing that we're going to get a number 9, but I do feel like we need an attacker to lead the line. That's key for me, and someone that has that sort of nous of scoring goals, being in the right place at the right time. I feel like that's something we definitely lack in our team. And with potential departures, Darwin Núñez looks like he could be leaving the club. You've got Jota, who's, there's a question mark over his head. I personally think he ends up staying at the club for at least another season. Uh, and there's other players that, there is no certainty that they will be remaining either. So in terms of Gyökeres, the rumor is that he is available for around that 55 million mark, which for me is not that crazy, especially in this modern market. 55 million is not a lot to sign a striker. We've been linked with other strikers that, in my eyes, are probably project strikers, strikers that are not accomplished and very raw in terms of their development. And they're valued at 80, 90 million pounds. So 55 for Gyökeres, who's just turned 27. So a player that, has played for a number of years. Good experience, especially in the Champions League, playing for Sporting. And I feel like he's a player that could be a difference maker when we're playing against oppositions that play that low block. I still have some concerns with Gyökeres, if I'm being honest. I've said so many positive stuff. We have to weigh the pros and cons. I'm not sure if he will adapt to the physicality of the Premier League. I think that would be a concern. And will he be given time and space in the Premier League? Because in the Portuguese league and also in the Champions League, I know the Champions League is a competitive competition, but when you're playing different teams from all over Europe, there's different styles, and I feel like the play could be a little bit more open in comparison to the Premier League, where teams are a bit more robust, they're a bit more closed up, playing low blocks, and it's very hard to break teams down in the Premier League. So I'm not entirely sure if he, will fit the bill, but I'm also looking at the strikers market. I just did a show last night with Liverpool 12 man, shout out to 12 man, where we pretty much discussed about 20 potential striker targets that have been linked with the club in the past few months. And as I was going through the list, the quality was decreasing as well. So the market's not that blessed when it comes to, proper gunmen in front of goals. So I wouldn't be too displeased about Gyökeres. I think he's a good striker. I actually think it would be a good move. I think it's a move that will give me some confidence. Of course, there's always a gamble when you sign a player from another league, but because he's played for Coventry, I know it was Championship level, but it's still, he's still played at that intense speed or that intense physicality in English football. So for me, I think he would be a good signing. Whether he makes that move or not, if you believe the odds in terms of the betting markets, it remains to be seen because United, I'm sure they will try their best to sign Gyökeres. They need a striker. They've signed Cunha. I think they're on the verge of signing Ibrahima. I think they had a bid rejected, but they're still going to pursue that player and try and get him over the line. So they need another striker up top. They can't rely on Zertsky and Hoyland. So there is definitely competition for Gyökeres' signature this summer. Whether Liverpool get over the line remains to be seen. But I would be pleased if we do sign because I feel like he's the only accomplished striker that is available in the current market. So let's see what happens with Gyökeres. I'm sure we'll get some further development in the coming days. Next player, no sort of huge surprise in terms of who we're discussing, and that is Florian Wirtz. Now, the German playmaker pretty much confirmed his move via social media. Yesterday, he posted a story on his Instagram um, as there were rumors circulating that he was demanding the number 10 shirt, which of course is currently owned by McAllister. And he wasn't very pleased about those rumors or speculation. And his message was that who says I want the number 10? I respect players. Don't believe everything was written, and he's got a clown emoji there. So that's what I always say. I always take these rumors and tweets and article with a pinch of salt because it's not always factual. And Florian Wirtz has confirmed that. And speaking of Wirtz, he was on international duty last night for Germany as they faced Portugal in the Nations League. The match didn't go to plan as Germany lost 2-1, but Wirtz was certainly the standout player for the German team. He got on the score sheet as well, scoring a header, and even got involved in a bit of a tussle with Bernardo Silva and Bruno Fernandes, and yeah, he looked like he wasn't having a bar of it. So me personally, I like to see aggression in my players, and Wirtz was definitely up for it yesterday. And he's not even kicked a ball yet, but he's still representing the Reds very nicely. So a good start before his career has even begun as a Liverpool player. And after the match, someone shouted in the sort of media section and asked if he's excited about his move to Liverpool. He smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. So, positive signs there. I know some fans were feeling a bit nervous in regards to Florian Wirtz. Is he going to join? Is he going to, are we going to pull out of the deal? Because, we're not, quite on the same wavelength in terms of the finer details of the payment structure and the total transfer fee. But from what I'm hearing, the current news is that Leverkusen and Liverpool are very close to agreeing a deal. So hopefully, it's only a matter of time that we get official news and we get, this sort of announcement, video slash images circulating on social media. So I'm sure we're all patiently waiting for these moments there. Next player we have to discuss, and for me, very confusing sort of news and speculation surrounding Luis Diaz in the last 24 hours. We all know that Saudi have shown strong interest over the course of the last few months that they want to sign the player. But today there was a bit of a breakthrough as Barcelona made an approach to sign Luis Diaz from Liverpool. That approach was rejected by the club. The rumor uh, surrounding the approach is that they wanted to offer £45 million, and that included add-ons for Luis Diaz. Look, that kind of offer is a slap in the face. That is pure disrespect from Barcelona. That is not the right valuation for a player of Luis Diaz's quality. And then Luis Diaz made some comments in the press conference as he's currently on international duty. And in quotes, this is what he said. He said, I'm very happy at Liverpool. They've treated me well since the first day. We're talking with other clubs. It's the transfer window. It's normal. If Liverpool renews my contract or if I have to stay the 2 years I have left, I'll be happy. It's up to them. That's not very promising to come out of Luis Diaz's mouth. It pretty much suggests to me that, he's saying the ball's in Liverpool's court, but we all get that impression. Well, I get that impression that Liverpool aren't willing to offer him a new contract, and that's been on the cards for some time. He's a player that, for me, should be rewarded for his effort and his hard work over the years with improved terms. He's earning currently around 50K a week. Now, of course, that is a lot of money for us normal people, but you know for a player that has been pretty much a starter week in, week out, and is very much one of our important players in the team. Um, he should be earning in terms of what he brings to the table in terms of his valuation because players that are in the team alongside him are earning twice, triple, quadruple the amount. So, you know, some will say that, what, when he joined from Porto, he did get a pay rise, but that's all it was. He got a pay rise because he joined from one club to another. The first club was Porto, and of course, Porto wouldn't really, pay too much in terms of weekly salary. At Liverpool, it's different because obviously the Premier League, a lot of money generated, and Liverpool are one of the wealthiest clubs in the world. So for me, he deserves to be rewarded for his effort and for all his productivity in the last few years. And that's probably why he's not feeling, appreciated from the owners because he hasn't been given improved terms since he's joined the club and he's been there for quite a few years now. So it's a strange one because I really rate the player. I would be pleased to see him stay. Um, but number one, it doesn't look like Liverpool are going to offer him a contract. So that's why he said, it's up to them because if they change their mind or they feel like maybe he does deserve it, then, it's a different conversation. And I think he would be happy to stay. But because he hasn't been given any indication that the club are willing to give him a new contract, I think he's looking elsewhere. And that's probably why he confirmed that, his team are speaking with other clubs, which is normal. It's not quite so normal because if you're satisfied and happy at a present club, you wouldn't want your agents or your agency to speak to other clubs because there's no need for it. You're in a very comfortable place. You're, in a stable place where you're happy. You're enjoying life. So no need to discuss with other clubs, in my opinion. So it's an interesting one. And also, I think one thing we have to consider is the fact that Luis Diaz might not be fully invested in moving over to the Saudi Pro League. That might not be a move that appeals to him at this stage of his career. I know he's around 28 years of age, 28, 29. So he's still got plenty of years to play at the highest level, especially in Europe. So maybe he's thinking that's not the right move for him at this stage of his career. So from a Liverpool point of view, we value Luis Diaz a lot higher than 45 million. We value him around that 70, 80 million pound mark. So the only team that could afford that sort of price structure is Saudi. And, if for some reason he doesn't want to move over to Saudi and he rejects any move coming from there, then, Liverpool are in a tricky situation. If that is the case where he doesn't want to move to Saudi, I think the club should keep him for at least another year and make a decision next summer in terms of 2026 because if he has another good season for us, his value should be quite high, and we could still get big money off him or I would say big money in terms of the transfer fee from him next summer. And also from our point of view, we still have a player that could be pivotal in terms of how uh, we present ourselves next season. So for me, selling him to Barcelona for that kind of price is a definite no. If they want to sign him, they have to offer, for me, that 70 million mark. That should be the range that we should be accepting bids. Anything less, for me, it should just get rebuffed and let the player stay for another year. He's got 2 years remaining in his contract, so there is no rush to get rid of him this summer. It would be better if we do from a financial point of view because it increases value. With 2 years remaining of his contract, the buyer would have to you know pay off the remaining contract plus the transfer fee. So you end up getting a better financial package. But from a football point of view, I don't think it makes sense to sell him just for the sake of it. If we get a good offer from Saudi and Diaz is willing to accept that offer, then it's a great move for all parties involved. But with Barcelona, I want us to get a good amount of money from them. And it's not going to be where we sell him for a cut price just because they want one of our players. That's not how it works. So let's see how this news develops. I thought, it looked like he was on the verge of leaving the club, and I thought Saudi would have been the destination. It doesn't seem to be the case right now. So let's see. We'll probably get more, I would say, update or more development in this rumor in the coming days and coming weeks. It might not be a swift resolution. It might, take, a couple of months until we get an outcome of this situation. So let's see what happens with Diaz, but it's an interesting one nonetheless. Next player is Rafael Leao. Now, a player that has been earmarked as Luis Diaz's direct replacement if he decides to leave this summer. Now, this player certainly splits opinion. For me personally, I rate Rafael Leao. On his heyday, I believe he's unplayable, and I think he would cook in our team. I know he can be inconsistent, but under Arne Slot's guidance and tutorage, I think he could be very effective in our system. So, if someone asks me who would be your first choice left winger to replace Diaz, for me, Leao would have been the answer because I feel like he's a bit of an unrealistic target. I think he'd cost an arm and a leg to bring over to Anfield. So that's why for me, I don't know if it's realistic, but there has been suggestions that Leao might want to move clubs and try a different league or pursue a new challenge. So why not Liverpool? I feel like he would be a fantastic addition to our squad. I think he'd be a star in our team. I think I'd have him ahead of Gakpo. I know some fans may disagree, but that's just my opinion on the player. So let's see what happens. Very early days. The rumors that we've apparently had talks about signing the Portuguese winger. Whether there's any genuine chance or genuine interest remains to be seen. But I for one was excited about this rumor when it broke. So hopefully, if Diaz does leave, I think Leao is an adequate replacement for Lucho. And speaking of AC Milan, there's been some news to suggest that they could be signing Federico Chiesa, and it looks like he could be set for return to Serie A this summer. Now, that might be why this Rafael Leao news started circulating because there were suggestions that we've started talks, but if you try and connect the dots, maybe we were in talks or we mentioned Leao because of a potential deal involving Chiesa and AC Milan. So my thoughts on Chiesa, I really rate the player. I do like him. I feel like it's a bit unfair for him to be dismissed after one season. I feel like he deserves to at least stay at the club for another season. But from what I've seen this season in terms of how he's been treated or how he's been selected under Arne Slot, it's not positive. It appears that Arne Slot doesn't trust the player because there's been a number of games where we've needed an attacking point of view or an attacking threat from the bench, and Chiesa's never been, substituted, or there's been games where he's not even been in the match day squad. So I don't know if there's, full trust in the player, because there might be different factors, in terms of training. Maybe he's not quite up to speed in terms of how the tactics are being deployed, or the way the team plays, and in terms of actual match day, maybe the physicality and the speed and the intensity of the Premier League is maybe too much for Chiesa. Which is no shame, because it's a very, very competitive league, and his skill set might be suited for, a Serie A or a La Liga, where it's a bit more slow paced and more technical, um, in general. So I would like to see him stay, but my gut feeling is telling me that he will be leaving Liverpool this summer. So let's see what happens. Before, it was Napoli that was the team that appeared to be the front runners. Now AC Milan are also in the mix. So let's see what happens regarding Chiesa and his future at the club. And speaking of future at the club, according to rumours, there is a line of Premier League teams that are interested in signing our defender, Joe Gomez. Now, the clubs include Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Burnley, Everton, Leeds, Newcastle, Sunderland, and West Ham. Now, apparently, Liverpool want 25 million for the defender. My thoughts on this rumor? It's a bit of a tricky one for me, because I really rate the player. Whenever he's fit, I feel like he's such an important member of our squad due to his versatility. He can play left back, right back, centre back. Well, of course, when we won the league title in 2020, that was due to Joe Gomez's formidable partnership with Van Dijk. But even last year, a couple of years ago, even playing left back, he was fantastic in that role. Right back, I feel like he's a little bit underrated, because he's got good crossing ability. So whenever he replaced Trent due to injury or suspension or whatever the case is, he's actually put in a good shift. So for me, he's such a good player to have in a squad. He won't be required to play week in, week out, but if we need him during a game or in rotation, I feel like that's a player who possesses great quality. However, unfortunately, availability has not been one of his strong strengths, especially this season. He's not played that many games. So that might open the door for a potential departure. I would personally like to see him stay for another season. And if he's not involved again, then I feel like next season is the time to part ways with Joe Gomez. I don't think this season is the right time to do it, because for me, if we sell Joe Gomez, that would also indicate that Kwanzaa is staying at the club. I can't see us selling Joe Gomez and Kwanzaa. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So if it was my choice, I would keep Joe Gomez ahead of Kwanzaa, even though Kwanzaa is probably the player that's more available. But I'm going on the basis that I think Liverpool will sign a centre back, and Joe Gomez will be labelled as fifth choice centre back in the squad. So I'd rather have experience rather than having a player that, for me, is lacking confidence and experience in Kwanzaa. So Kwanzaa would better off probably either going out on loan to a Premier League side, or if a team offers us, 30, 40, 50 million pounds for Kwanzaa, then that might be good business for us to do as well. Of course, we can probably insert a buyback clause, but I think, Kwanzaa, for me, whenever he's played this season, there's parts of his games I'm thinking, you know what, he's good, but then he's also very prone to individual mistakes, and also giving penalties away, and also at fault for conceding goals. It's a tricky one. And I feel like Arne Slot, he knows that there's a player there, and I feel like there's a player there as well. But I don't feel like he's fully developed yet. And I feel like a loan move would make a lot of sense for Kwanzaa. So maybe keep Joe Gomez for another season, and maybe even loan out Kwanzaa for a season, and then bring him back next summer. And then we'll just assess what the right situation is for both players. So for me, I'm not quite ready for the club to part ways with Joe Gomez. But I know a lot of fans will disagree and say that maybe it's time that we sold the player because he's not available for team selection. So let's see. Let's see what happens with Joe Gomez. Just got a comment here from Mazzy. Big up Mazzy. He says, "When do you think Liverpool will sign Wirtz? It's taking too long, and also, what will be the final price?" My prediction was that it was going to be announced today, so they were going to do that Wirtz Wednesday sort of theme because we did the Think on Friday one last week. I think we'll get confirmation. I think early next week. I think it will be that kind of time. He's currently on international duty, so I think once he's completed getting involved in those games, then I feel like we'll probably fast track that move even further. I think it'll be announced next week. That would be my prediction. In terms of the final price, I can see it being like 110 million plus add-ons, and add-ons will accumulate to potentially 120 million. That's the kind of ballpark that I'm thinking mentally. I don't think he'll be less than that. But we'll get clarification in the coming days. I don't want to say weeks because I think you're you're getting a bit impatient. I think a lot of us Liverpool fans are as well. It's just PTSD for us because we've missed out on big deals over the years. So we just want to get that deal over the line so we can say we've actually signed Florian Wirtz. Um, but yeah, I think we'll get some confirmation in the coming days. So fingers crossed that happens. Now on to the next rumor. Hugo Ekitike. Now, this rumor continues to circulate online, although there hasn't been further development as such. Uh, right now, it appears that Chelsea are the front runners to sign the French striker, even though that they've just presented Liam Delap as their new number 9. There's still question marks, I would say, in regards to them signing another striker because I don't think it's a necessity for Chelsea. They've got Delap now. They've got Jackson, who's had a decent season for Chelsea last year, and they've got Nkuku. They've got 3 strikers there um, for that number 9 role. But from a Liverpool point of view, apparently we're still in talks to explore a possible deal. If I'm being brutally honest, guys, I don't know if this will happen. I think he would be a fantastic signing and a fantastic addition to our squad. I'm just not getting positive vibes, and I think that's probably down to the transfer fee. Frankfurt are demanding 84 million pounds, which is 100 million euros. That's a lot of money for a player that I don't think is the finished article, the accomplished striker that we want. If you look at the other strikers around, Sesko, he's been valued at 92 million, which is completely outrageous as well. So it's very interesting to see what Liverpool do, what type of striker they will sign. Ekitike for me, fits the mold. He can drop deep and be that false nine in transition in certain games, but he can also be a focal point and go up. So we need that type of striker that is the complete forward. He's still a bit raw. I don't think he's a killer in front of goal. That's something he definitely needs to refine in order to be regarded as a top striker in Europe. So yeah, it remains to be seen what happens at Ekitike. If he goes to Chelsea, I think that's a poor deal for the player. I don't think that's the right deal for him. It could stunt his development because I feel like he's at that stage where he's just one level down. Once he hits that next level, I feel like he's at that level where he will be regarded as one of the most sort of top strikers in Europe. Going at Chelsea, where they chop and change quite a bit, they've just signed Delap. So, what's the stance on Delap? Is he the main number 9? Is he a backup? At this stage, is very very unclear. So for me, the right move, and not to be biased because we're Liverpool fans, but the right move would be for him to join Liverpool because if he comes in, he'll be the main striker in our team, and I feel like he will be given a chance to play consecutive games and develop and continue to improve his all-round game. So I would love to see Ekitike join Liverpool, but at that price, I don't think that is the right valuation. 50, 60 million pound. That is a bit of a realistic price point. So right now it's very unclear. Uh, According to rumors, though, that Chelsea will sign him, but how many strikers are they going to sign? So let's see what happens with Ekitike. Yeah, it's something that I'm not completely sure where he ends up. He might even end up staying at Frankfurt for another year, and that's not even the worst case scenario for him, because this is his first breakthrough season at Frankfurt. So another season would definitely help in terms of him continuing his development. And also the reason why they want such a big transfer fee is because they bought him from PSG and they have a sell-on clause as well, so they get a percentage of the next transfer fee. So yeah, a lot of T's and C's, in terms of Ekitike making that next move. But let's see. I think we'll get further updates in the coming days and weeks. But right now, I don't think he's Liverpool bound, unfortunately. I just got some comments here from Azra. Big up Azra. He says, "Hi, what's the real situation around Luis Diaz? Is mixed messages. Do the club want to sell him or keep him?" That's what I mentioned earlier on, Azra. It's very confusing. It's definitely sort of mixed signals from the club because we all know as fans that the club don't want to offer Diaz a new contract. That's, I'd like to say, public knowledge amongst us because he's not been offered new terms since he joined the club, and he's one of the, I would say, one of the players that earns less in comparison to our attackers. So I feel like what Liverpool are doing right now, they're trying to maximize the sort of asking price because we know we have interest from Saudi. So Saudi would be willing to spend 70, 80 million. That is probably what we've listed as our valuation for the striker. But within Europe, I don't think teams will be willing to spend that kind of money. Team that have shown the strongest interest is Barcelona, but Barcelona apparently tried to offer us 45 million pounds, including add-ons. So that's a slap in the face, as I mentioned earlier on. That's not a deal that's even worth listening to. That's a swift rejection as soon as that comes through. So I think the club are trying to get a maximum offer from Saudi. And if that doesn't happen, I think they'll keep Diaz for another season. That's my gut feeling now. I don't think he goes to Barcelona. It only goes to Barcelona if they are willing to spend 60, 70, 80 million pounds. If not, I think Liverpool will be happy to have him for one more year because he's got 2 years remaining of his contract. So there's no urgency to sell him right now. If he has a good season this coming season, his valuation still remains at a good level. So I think they'd rather keep him for one more year rather than sell him on and, you know, sell him on to a Barcelona team where you don't get, a good financial package. I don't think that makes any sense. And why strengthen Barcelona's stance right now? So yeah, mixed signal. I think the club were willing to sell Luis Diaz, and that's probably why, we've been. I think his girlfriend posted saying a message about saying thank you and about the support and all that sort of stuff from the fans. So it looks like he's on the verge of leaving, but this approach from Barcelona earlier today has kind of been a bit of a spanner in the works, unfortunately. So let's see. I think if I was to make a prediction, I do think he will end up leaving, um, but I wouldn't be displeased if he stayed. I think he's a good player, and I feel like he would definitely be a great asset for us in this new coming season. So let's see what happens with Diaz. Coming in from Ozan Kabak says, "Yo, Ozzy, big up Ozan Kabak. I hope you're doing well." He says, "I'm getting worried about this, but still, I know a lot of fans are. I would just say, just calmer. We'll get there. I think because he's on international duty right now, it's just slowing the process a little bit in terms of the physical element. Because of course he'll need to do a medical, and then physically come over to Liverpool and sign the terms and all that sort of stuff. I think the stumbling point was the contract in terms of the not the contract, sorry, the agreement between the two clubs. But from what we're hearing from reliable sources or journalists, uh, that looks like they've come to terms to an agreement, and possibly even a payment package as well. So personally, I think it's only a matter of time. I think we should get some sort of official news at some point next week. That would be my prediction, but I can't say for sure. So we'll just have to sit tight and wait for the news, and yeah, hope it does get concluded, because I think we're all feeling a bit of PTSD because of past deals that never got concluded, unfortunately. So hopefully this will go over there, and this will happen for us. Um, Double D, big up Double D. He says, "Bring Gyökeres, man." I like Gyökeres. I think that's the striker we should go for. If you look at the market and you look at the strikers that are available, a lot of them have already secured moves. So you've got Isak, who for me isn't leaving Newcastle. Alvarez, I would love to see Alvarez at Liverpool, but I don't see that happening either. Osimhen looks like he's heading over to Saudi, so that's pretty much a deal that's going to be concluded soon. And for me, Gyökeres goes into that next line. I think he's probably the best one there. Ekitike is a good striker, but not for £84 million. And the same with Sesko. And if you wanted to go for a astute type signing, Jonathan David could have been a decent stopgap signing for us, but he looks like he's on the verge of joining Napoli. So there aren't a lot of options out there, because a lot of clubs are trying to sign strikers. And of course, Liam Delap, I know a player that you really like as well. He's gone to Chelsea now. So there aren't many players available. So Gyökeres, for me, in terms of being accomplished and being a lethal finisher, I think he's probably tops the bill. And I really hope we do go for him, because we do need that type of striker in the team, in my opinion. So let's see. The odds are saying that he's favourite to join Liverpool. Only time will tell. I just got a comment here from Femba, big up Femba. He said, before we move into signing of a striker, do we really need a centre forward number 9, or can we do playing with a flexibility in forward line like PSG? It's interesting because it all depends in terms of how we set up as a team this season, because I don't think we'll play the way we played last season. You know, with the type of players that we're trying to sign. So we've got Frimpong, he's nailed on. He's our first signing. Kerkez looks like he's going to be concluded soon as well. So you've got two very attack-minded fullbacks there. So that suggests to me that we're going to really charge down that flank, and there's going to be our creativity from the byline. Normally, you have Mohamed Salah playing, out wide. I think he's going to be a bit more inverted due to Frimpong's ability on that right hand side. And I think Wirtz, my opinion, I think Wirtz will play a lot more on the left than in that sort of central number 10 role. I think it will definitely, be a 50-50 sort of thing where he'll play both positions. But on paper, I think he'll predominantly play on the left. So that allows him to come inside as well. And that allows Kerkez to be that left back that goes up and down that flank. So the big question mark is the striker. What type of striker do we go for? Do we go for an out and out number 9? So that basically means Wirtz and Salah play as your number 10s. Or do we go for a striker that can do both, or is traditionally a false 9 that can drop deep, and that allows Wirtz and Salah to be runners to go ahead of the false 9, and then kind of like when we had Firmino, when you had Mane and Salah, going a bit more forward and being the goal scorers in the team. It's going to be interesting. And I think whoever we sign as that striker will paint the picture for me in terms of what we are going to do going forward and how we're going to set up as a team. The striker market is not saying much, if I'm being honest with you. And even the false 9 thing, there aren't a lot of options that I feel like, there's no name that I can say that's the guy 100% in terms of the false 9. Alvarez would be the perfect. He's a 9.5. He's a number 9 and a number 10. He would have been the perfect striker, but I just don't think he's available, unfortunately. So in terms of us having a flexible sort of front line like PSG, it could be something on the cards. But it will depend on the profile of players that we have. Verts, that could be a player that ends up playing that central false 9 role that I've just mentioned. So it could be an option. I don't think we'll play that way regularly, but it could be, a style of play that could be implemented against certain teams. So, me personally, I'd rather see Verts playing from the left or behind the main striker. The false nine, I think he can do a decent job, but I think you lose certain aspects of his game playing that false nine role. So let's see. It's going to be very interesting in terms of who we try to sign, but the striker market is not saying much if I'm being brutally honest. Um, Raji Pengtin, big up yourself. He says, Ozzy, what's your expectation for next season? And after we've signed Verts and Kerkez, who else do you want to sign? Thanks. Big up yourself, Raji Pengtin. I think expectations, we go again. And that's not me being cocky or arrogant. I feel like we're in a position where we were by far the most consistent team, but I still feel like there's levels that we can definitely achieve. And with the profile of signings that we're making right now, that's an indication to me that slot means business. Like, last year was slot 1.0, this is 2.0. We're going to play a different type of football, a bit more attack minded, a bit more to his philosophy in that manner. So I'm excited about next season. Of course, if you look at our current rivals, I think Man City are the ones that are going to really challenge us next season. They're on the verge of signing Reinders. They're on the verge of possibly signing Turkey as well. So At Nuri, I think is concluded or it's on the verge of being concluded as well. And that's a good signing for them. He's I always feel like he's earmarked for City. The way he plays, he just seems like he's a good fit for how Pep sets out, especially with their left backs being a bit more inverted. I feel like he's a good fit for them. So those are three good signings there. Um, but with the Vert signing, once we get that over the line, because I know fans are getting slightly nervy about that one, that's gonna give us a lot of confidence because I'm not just saying it because we're Liverpool fans and I'm trying to gas up the situation. Verts is a generational talent. He really is. And I know that term gets thrown around a little bit too much nowadays, but he generally is. I think that sign is going to be a game changer. So let's see. Kerkez, Frimpong, Florian Wirtz, for me, that is three amazing signings. I would love for us to sign another striker, and I would like us to sign another midfielder and a centre back. Now, in terms of the profiles, the striker right now probably Gyökeres in terms of the style. I would like a proper number nine. If we get a false number nine, I don't know who would be that person because I don't. In terms of the market, I don't think there's a prominent false number nine that could come in and actively change the way we play. Or let's look internally. Maybe if we wanted a false nine, if that is the style of striker that Arne Slot want, just put Gakpo in that false nine role. He did it really well under Jurgen Klopp in his opening season. So I feel like he could play that role, and then maybe we just spend the money that's been generated from the sales of Darwin Núñez and possibly Diaz, and then sign a bona fide left winger. If I was to choose a left winger, Rafael Leao would be high on that list, but I really like the look of Barcola. Barcola is a player that I really rate. That would be my sort of dream signing if we were to break the bank for a left winger. So let's see. I think Verts will play that left wing role a lot more than people assume. People just assume he's going to be a shoe in at number 10. I think he's going to play both roles, kind of like what Coutinho did back in the day, and he kind of gives me Coutinho vibes anyway. So I feel like that's going to be a good fit for us. In terms of the centre midfielder profile, I think he needs to be a player that is defensive focused, but is also a deep playmaker. I feel like that's the profile we need. So we've been linked with the likes of Angelo Stiller and Wharton from Crystal Palace. That's the type of profile that I'm looking at as well. So either of those signings, I think would be great for the squad. In terms of Stiller might be a bit more attainable. I think Wharton would cost a lot. I think it costs at least 60, 70 million. So I don't know if the club will be willing to spend that much on a player who I don't think will be a guaranteed starter, but will be in rotation with McAllister and Gravenberch. And the centre back position, it would have been Howson, but I think he's on the verge of joining Real Madrid. I'd personally go for Hato. I don't think that's a popular choice, but I'd go for Hato because I feel like he's played as a left-footed centre back. That's how he started his career, but he brings that versatility because he can play left back as well. So you've got a better ball playing, in that centre back role. I feel like it can give us flexibility in terms of how we set up. We can play in a back three, or it could be Hato and Konate, and then you've got Gravenberch, dropping deep, forming a back three, and then it allows your fullbacks to go forward. I feel like that would add a great balance to our team. So Hato would be my choice, and I think he wouldn't cost too much. I think he'd cost like about 30 million pounds in this market. So yeah, so that's about how many times is that? So Gyökeres, Ping Pong, Wirtz, striker, centre mid, and centre back. So that's six. I'd be a bit more greedy. I'd probably go for another player that is a backup to Salah for that right wing. Well, Cherky would have been my guy. I think he's an outstanding talent, but it looks like he's on the verge of joining City. If I could name another player, I quite like the look of the Monaco winger. His name is Akliouche. So that's a player who looks like a special talent. And if we do have interest in the player, which we do, that has been it's been reported in the last few weeks that we do have interest in the player. We need to be quick and fast to get him because Paris Saint-Germain, they have a new philosophy now. They want to sign up and coming French talent like Akliouche. So for me, if we are serious about it, let's make sure we get that done. So let's see. Um, Seven sounds a bit too far-fetched, but I feel like six is probably the right number. But feel free to drop a comment and let me know what would be your targets as well. I'd love to hear from you. Um, got another comment here from Ready Steady Cook. Big up yourself. It says to all Liverpool fans who don't want Gyökeres, mark my words, when United get him, wow. I know he's splits the fan base. I've seen a lot of fans saying they're not fully on board. I personally think that's for a couple of reasons. One is because uh, the whole Portuguese leaving, because the last striker we signed for Portugal didn't do well, and that was Darwin Núñez. So I think that's another element of PTSD kicking in where we're thinking, oh, we don't want another Darwin Núñez. Oh, we don't want another striker that's come from the Portuguese because the last one we signed, he never hit the ground running. So that's the element of that uncertainty. Is he going to do well? Is he going to adapt to the way we play? Is he going to adapt to the Premier League? There's a lot of question marks around that. I think because he's played English football to an extent, I feel like he will be fit enough to, get climatized to the way we play and how the league is as well. Of course, not played Premier League football. I know he was with Brighton, but he didn't really make much of a impression there. And I don't think he played in the Premier League. So I think that's probably the best name out there. I don't, Isak, Alvarez, they all are amazing strikers, but they're not available. So if they're not available, you got to move on to other targets. And Gyökeres is a striker that is available. Another player that I like is Osimhen, but it looks like he's on the verge of joining Al Hilal, or I think one of the Saudi Pro League teams. So yeah, I hope we don't regret it, because if he goes to United and cooks, then I'd be disappointed. But let's see what happens with him. Manny says, how much do you think we'll get for Darwin Núñez, and why do you think things didn't work out? Because he's a talented player. Okay, in terms of the first part of that question, how much do I think? If it's Saudi, we'll get 70, 75 million. I think that would be the range. If it's within Europe, I think we'll get around 40, 45, which I'm not pleased with, but it depends on interest from the clubs. I think he will end up at Saudi, not because I want him to, because we get more money. They showed very strong interest in him in January, and I think he was willing to accept that offer as well. The only concern for Liverpool at the time was that it was very late in the window, and we didn't have time to find an adequate replacement. So I think he ends up going to Saudi, and 70 million would be fantastic. In terms of why things didn't work out, I just don't think he improved since day one. I feel like when he came into the league, I know he had a very prolific season for Benfica, but from the first account I saw of him when in his opening season, his finishing was very, very wayward, very erratic, no calmness, no composure in front of goal. And because of the nature of how he plays, he's quite chaotic where he's aggressive, he's on the front foot, he's running around a bit. So people assume that he's going to be a great fit for the Premier League, but that's not how it always works because to be a top striker, you've got to have an element of calmness when you're in a high pressure situation. So if you're one on one, you can't be erratic or chaotic in that moment. You've got to stay calm. You've got to get cold blooded, and then think, how am I going to calmly stop this in? Because you look at all the lethal strikers, in the Premier League history, they've been cold finishers. Aguero, he was a finisher where he wouldn't be scoring spectacular goals, but one on one, you can bet your house on it, he'll score. So I think that's an area of his game where he didn't excel. He's been there for 3 seasons now. For me, he's pretty much stagnated that area of his game, and that should have been an area of improvement where he became a better finisher. But unfortunately, he didn't have it in his locker. I also think he lacks game intelligence where when he plays up top, his hold up play has improved, which is one thing I'll give him. But, you know, there's times where he's not understood the assignment, i.e., when he's holding the ball, should he lay off or should he take one more touch and make a run or a half 10? Like he never got that balance right. So I feel like the speed of the Premier League was a bit too much for him because when he controls the ball, he doesn't know his next move. And the best players always paint a picture 2, 3 moves ahead. So I don't feel like he was ever in that kind of motion. When he got the ball, then that's when he thinks, oh, what should I do? And by that time, he's already got camped by one of the defenders or one of the midfielders from the opposition, and he's lost the ball. So that's something I feel like he hasn't improved in. But I I always said he's a talented player, but I just don't think he's suited for the Premier League. If he goes to Serie A or La Liga, I think he actually does really well in those leagues because it's a bit more slow pace in comparison to the Premier League, and I feel like he'll do a good job there. So I think those are just key reasons in terms of why it never worked out for Darwin Núñez. But nothing to say that he can't go on and have a good career. I feel like he's shown that, especially when he plays for Uruguay, he's a different player there. So he can definitely have a successful career. But unfortunately, I think it's going to be elsewhere. Um, Liverpool Goals TV, big up yourself. He says, "Hello everyone. I am uploading a video within the next hour on my channel of the squad we possibly could register for next season. It goes into quite a bit of detail. Please feel free to check it out. I will definitely check it out once I finish my show here. So big up yourself. Thank you for your comment there. Uh, Abdul Rahim, big up Abdul. He says, what are the futures for Gomez, Konate, Kwanzaa, Simicast, Endo, Elliott, Jones, Morton, Chiesa, Nunes, Diaz, and Jota? So I'll try and do it in a quick fire fashion. This will be just my opinion. For me, I would like Gomez to stay, but there seems to be interest in the player joining another Premier League team. So that could be on the cards. But I would like Joe Gomez to stay. Konate, I'm hoping and praying that he signs a new contract extension. Kwanzaa, if we get a bid of like 40, 50 million pounds, I think we should accept it. If not, I think a loan move would make the most sense for Kwanzaa. I don't think he should stay at Liverpool this season. I think he still needs further development in his game. Simicast, I think he's on the way out due to the imminent signing of Kerkez. Endo, I think he will stay. I think we need that experience and stability in the middle of the park. Elliot, unfortunately, seems like a top guy, but I think he will be leaving this summer. Jones will be staying at the club. Morton will be leaving. I know he's got a common injury, so I don't know the extent of how close he is to full fitness, but I do expect him to leave this summer. Chiesa, my gut feeling is telling me he's going to leave, but I would like him to stay. Nunes, I think he's definitely leaving. Diaz, if you asked me this question 24 hours ago, I would have said he's definitely going. Now I'm a little bit unsure because of Liverpool's stance right now. But if I have to say a direct answer, I think he will end up going. And Jota, I think he ends up staying. Probably not what a lot of us fans want, but I think he will end up staying for another season. So yeah, that's my opinion on the future of these players. Um, Albert says, okay, if we keep Luis Diaz, then do we still want to bring in Anthony Gordon? How much do you rate Gordon? I think he's a good player. I don't rate him as highly as some Liverpool fans, especially last year, where fans were willing to sell Diaz and get Gordon in exchange. For me, that was a no-go because I feel like they were different levels. I think, and the comparison I used last year was Luis Diaz for me is a Shabby Alonso and Anthony Gordon is a Gareth Barry. That's the kind of level where they're both good players, but they're not on the same level in my opinion. So I wasn't pleased with that speculation last year. And I was very pleased that Luis Diaz ended up staying. If Diaz was to leave, Anthony Gordon wouldn't be on top of my list. I'd go for someone like a Barcola, uh, a Rafael Leao. I know these are, big names, so I don't know if they'll be easy to attain. But if not, then I go for a different profile, maybe like a Malik Fofana, who's a young and up and coming left winger, to play as an understudy for a Cody Gakpo. I feel like that would be a good balance within our squad. Anthony Gordon, I think Newcastle would demand a huge transfer fee of possibly £80 million. I don't think he's worth that at all. So for me, no, I don't think that would be a great deal for Liverpool. Abdul says we require a highly promising world class central defender to undergo mentorship from VVD. A prolific striker is needed to consistently score, and a technically gifted, organized, and commanding defensive midfielder is essential to reinforce the midfield. And yeah, they're not hard to come by, but in terms of your analysis, that is I do in the ideal you'd want someone to be an understudy for Van Dijk. Howson would have been the perfect defender, honestly, but unfortunately, we have to possibly look for another option. And in terms of the prolific striker, the market is not saying much. The two players that will probably, replicate what you've said is Isak and Alvarez, and unfortunately, they're not available. And the midfielder, for me, I don't need the midfielder to be a commanding defensive midfielder. I don't want that enforcer type number six. Of course, they still need to have defensive awareness in their game, but I feel like we need a deep playmaker, a player that can set the tempo and that can break the lines as well. I think that's the type of midfield that we should be looking at. So let's see what happens. Abdul said we must finalize the signing of Wirtz and Kerkez by next week. I'm positive that that will happen. I think that will happen. So yeah, let's hope and wait on that one. WD says apparently Frimpong was also bought with AFCON in mind for the right hand side. Possibly. I think Frimpong ticked a lot of boxes. In terms of the right back position, there weren't too many names out there, but also the reason why I say he ticks so many boxes because he can play in different roles. Right back is going to be his primary position. If we end up playing with a back three during games, he can play that wing back role with complete ease. And he played as a right winger for the Netherlands. So I felt like that was, I wouldn't say it was probably higher on that list, but it was definitely a a consideration or a pro for us to sign Frimpong because he can play in those different positions. That's why in terms of my assessment of Frimpong, that right hand side is his. He controls that right hand side. Whether he plays right back, right wing back, or as a right winger, he'll play the same way. So it's just how the team is embodied around him. He's still gonna have that same focus to be attack minded and charge down that byline and provide crosses and even get in the end of opportunities to score goals as well. So yeah, I feel like he's such a great addition to our squad. If we, because the concern with Salah over the years has been that who plays right wing because we never really have a backup right winger. If Chiesa stays there, Chiesa is an option, but of course he wasn't involved much last year. Jota for me doesn't do great there. Gakpo is okay. The only player that looked decent on the right hand side as a makeshift right winger was Luis Diaz. So Frimpong is natural, so he can play that role. So for me, he ticks all the boxes. So I'm very, very pleased about the signing of Frimpong. I know some fans still have a bit of reservation, but for me, I'm very, very pleased about that signing. Grim Reaper, big up. So he says, I can't see FSG spending another big sum of money on another player. They will lower the standards for a cheaper striker. I hope I'm wrong and FSG surprised me. That's why I suggested Jonathan David as a stopgap signing on a free transfer because He is clinical. He's not probably easy on the eye. He's not a flashy type of striker, but he knows where the back of the net is. And maybe that was the type of striker we could have just signed. And then next year, we could probably go and sign an Isak on Alvarez on the basis that, we don't have too much money. You know, it'd be very unlikely that we spend, 100 million on two players separately, if that makes sense. So let's see. That's why I feel like the Gyökeres deal is a good one for us because 55 million is not a crazy amount, and he's accomplished. I feel like he would actually, have an instant impact in the team. So let's see what happens. I'll be, pleasantly surprised if we end up signing a top striker as well. But I think Gyökeres could be the one. Double D says Osimhen Saudi talks have broken down. Is that the case? Chat, let me know who would you go for, Osimhen or Gyökeres? Because I feel like those are the two strikers that are a little bit more realistic, in my opinion. In fact, I'm gonna put a poll up, and then you guys can let me know who you would pick in that scenario. Because I know fans will have regards to um, Gyökeres. Some I think maybe because he's from the Portuguese, and even Osimhen. I've heard people say that um, he's got a big ego, which I haven't really, encountered. Or I've not heard much in regards to him having that kind of attitude. Some people take arrogance you know, for someone that's actually a very confident person. That might just be the difference there. So, it might be rubbed up the wrong way. I don't know. Um, but yeah, let me know what you guys think because I think those two are the realistic targets. I don't see Sesko being available for 90 million. That is absolutely wild. Um, so so yeah, let me know what you guys think because yeah, I would have paid 90 million for Gyökeres, that's for sure. Uh, Grim Reaper says, I still think Matteo Retegui is a safe bet and Jonathan David as a backup. Jonathan David wouldn't be a bad backup for me, but I feel like he's on the verge of joining Napoli. And Matteo Retegui, he looks a decent player. He's a good finisher. I still have reservations about signing an Italian striker because it doesn't seem to work well. Especially the Liverpool's history hasn't worked well, and even if you look at the Premier League, it just doesn't seem to be a match made in heaven. The last striker that came through was Scamacca, and he had a great reputation in Italy, but he couldn't hit the ground running at West Ham. So that would be my reservation in terms of, Italian strikers' adaptability to the Premier League because it hasn't been a successful one over the years. Abdul, with his comments, his RFSG transfer strategy prioritizes cost-effective acquisitions, leveraging the expertise from Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards, Julian Walls, and LSD background data analytics team. When he said expertise and Richard Hughes in the same sentence, I got a bit lost there. But I will listen. I've said to you guys before, if he gets the deals done that I, dream or really, feel like, what, that's an amazing bit of business. He will get my plaudits for sure. As of yet, he hasn't done anything. So for me, I'm still on that time. Mazzy says, David Frimpong is maybe the quickest player around. Where would you play him to get the best out of him? I think right back is fine. I'm content with him playing right back because we were never going to sign a like for like replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold. That wasn't really an option because there isn't a player like that in world football, unfortunately. So for me, we had to think of a alternative, a different type of player that can still be very effective. I think that's why they've gone for Frimpong because Frimpong can play right back, right wing back, or even as a right winger, but his style of play doesn't change. He plays on the front foot. He will attack that byline. He's very, very quick. He's electric on the ball. I remember watching him against Spain, and he had Cucurella on toast. And Cucurella is very good in one-on-one duels. So for me, he's a player that's going to be very effective on that right hand side, and it also allows Salah to become more of an inside forward again and be a goal scorer more so than not because this past season, he's been more of a creator, and I've enjoyed it, you know, I feel like for him at this stage of his career where, he's getting older, he might not be as quick as he used to be, but in terms of his shooting ability, that hasn't gone. So for me, you've got 2 full attack-minded, fullbacks on your flanks. It allows players like Salah and your Wirtz to go more inside. So for me, I think Jeremy Frimpong at that position will work. But if we were to go for a back three or wing back with complete ease, and if we need him as a right winger, he can also do a great job there as well. So for me, fantastic addition to our squad. Rumour says, I see an article where Liverpool want to swap Elliott with Eze from Palace plus cash. Grim Reaper, if you have a link to the article, I would love to read that because that signing would be insane. I'd be all over that. Yeah, that'd be a great sign. Can you imagine Eze in the number 10 role and Wirtz on the left, Salah on the right, and then we sign a striker like a Gyökeres, and we've got Kerkez and Frimpong down the flanks. That would be something. Not gonna lie, that would be something. So if there's any truth to that, I am fully on board because I've been speaking about Eze for years. So let's see. Let's see what happens with that one. Femba says, "Do you have any info or pictures of our next season's kit? I will definitely need an Adidas jersey for sure. Can't wait." I'm sure not official images, but I do remember seeing images where it's pretty much going to be our next kit. So of course our kit, our first home kit is red. Second one is white, and then our third kit is like an emerald green um, sort of color. And I'll be honest with you, they all look really really nice. So let me see if I can find you that image because it has been circulating for some time now. Yeah, let me try and get you this image, and then yeah, I can present it for you on the screen so you can have a look. So bear with me 1 second, and then I can present it to you. Of course, not official, so it's not from Liverpool or anything like that. Um, well, look, that's what I've seen. So that's the home kit, and that's the one that I think all of us will agree that that is how it's going to appear. The white kit is our away kit, and then the green color one is our third kit. So that could be, these kits will be launched unfortunately after July, only because our current deal with Nike doesn't expire until then. So we can't officially unveil any shirts with Adidas until that contract is concluded. So that's why, when Frimpong was presented the other day, he's still wearing the current Nike shirt that we were wearing last season. So that's the reason why it hasn't been unveiled. But I'm excited because I love Adidas um, as a football brand, and the shirts that we've had over the years. I feel like my favorite tops were the Adidas ones. So and also you get an option of having them in short sleeve, full sleeve as well. So if you play a lot of football and you're playing in the winter, the full sleeve actually works out quite well. So gives you that option to choose between the two. But yeah, Adidas for me normally make the best shirts. I think they make the best designs. Nike over the last few years, I wear a lot of Nike, but yeah, it felt like it was more of a copy and paste job when it came to the kits. So and it felt like they were using a lot of old Liverpool designs and no real originality, unfortunately. But onwards and upwards, we've got Adidas back as our main sponsor, so hopefully we'll get some nice kits on the way as well. Um, Green Reaper says I'd swap Elliott plus cash for Crystal Palace centre back Gay, and we have a decent centre back. I don't think that needs to be the same deal. That can be a separate deal. If they want Harvey Elliott over to Crystal Palace is not a bad move. He returns back to London. I know he's from London, and he gets to play in a team that has some good talent there. They've got a good coach in Glasner, and they play Europa League next year. So it's a team that they're on the up. Um, in terms of the Gay deal, I think that would be a separate deal. I don't think they do it as a collective deal, um, just because swap deals aren't as common. And also, I think Gay's transfer fee won't be as high as it was last year. I don't know if you guys recall, Newcastle offered up to 70 million to sign him, and they rejected. They placed about 4 or 5 bids, and they still couldn't get over the line. So for me, Gay will be available at more of a cut price because he's got 1 year remaining. He could be available for 30-40 million, and I'll be honest with you, that wouldn't be a bad sign. If we were to, let's say, loan out Quansah for a year and we sign Gay as our third choice centre backs, I wouldn't be, too upset about that. I would probably want a different profile, if I'm being honest with you, but he gives you that solid option from the bench. So yeah, let's see. Let's see what happens with the centre back position. The Elliott one, I'm sure we'll get some further news in regards to his next move very, very soon. But if it is Palace and it involves Eze, yeah, I'm all for that one. Uh, 3%, Materazzi was born in Argentina, he plays for the Italian national team because of his grandfather, but he was raised in Latin America. Okay, I did not know that. That's an interesting fact there. Uh, Raji Penting says, Ozzy, why do you think LFC are willing to break the British record now and acting like a big club before we watch other teams spend big now, you're showing boss levels? My first stream will tell you that they've always had the funds because we've tried to sign players in the past, like your Bellinghams, your Casados, and even your Tchouaméni at one point as well. I feel like for them, it was always going to be one marquee signing was going to happen at some point. And I feel like maybe because of Michael Edwards, there's a bit more trust and faith in, making a big move like that. I think under Jurgen Klopp, especially towards the latter stages, I don't think they had that full trust to, allow him to make that big signing like that. And I feel like with Edwards, he's a bit more calculated, a bit more measured. The data analytics team, they're working overtime to, see who is the right fit for them. I feel like that might be why. But also, we've always said, I've definitely said over the years, whenever we've won a big title like a Premier League title or Champions League title, we've never shown ambition to sign a top player the following summer because it doesn't matter how well you've done, you still need to improve in some shape or form. So for me, maybe the pennies dropped and they realized that this is a great time to invest in a player like Wirtz. And also, as silly as it sounds, the way FSG operate, or even Michael Edwards, 'cause, he's been doing main operations over the years, they wouldn't try to sign a player that's not available. That's always been their stance. If they know if they get an inkling that a player is available, that's when they go all in and then try and sign a player. I don't think Wirtz was our number one target. I think that was a dream target in the back of our minds. And they registered interest in the player, thinking, if we show interest, maybe, if there's an opportunity, we will look into it. But I think most of us expected him to go over and join Bayern Munich because that is the norm. That is what happens in the Bundesliga. Any top talent outside of Bayern Munich ends up joining Bayern Munich in the end. But this time around, we've, definitely shocked the airways by making this move for Wirtz, and Wirtz saying it's Liverpool or nothing. That's what it seems to be right now. So for me, it's positive outlook from Liverpool, but also for Europe because, we've broken the mold there where German players aren't just gonna get signed by Munich like that. So look, I'm all for it. It's showing that, we're moving like we've been wanting this for a very, very long time, and we're finally doing it. I don't wanna jinx it, but hopefully, it happens. And I'm hoping we sign another top striker as well. Doesn't need to be a 100 million one. If we can get an Alvarez, just a little hint there, then fantastic. But no, I think we're doing good business. Frimpong is a great piece of business in my opinion. You've got Kerkez, who should be coming in as well, and then you've got Wirtz and possibly another striker. And I'd like a midfielder and a centre back as well. So, you know, not asking for too much here, man, but let's see what we can do. 100% I agree with LSD. I went to news now and scrolled down. You'll find it about Ellie and Eze. I'm all for that. I'm all for that. I'm hoping they, get some strong sources presenting that news because yeah, that would be something in my opinion. As well, says, who do you think will be our biggest challenges next season? Arsenal, Man City. For me, 100% Man City. I don't think Arsenal have addressed any areas right now. Of course, once the season has begun or once the transfer window is closed, then feel free to message me again. I'll give you a bit more of a accurate answer because Arsenal, for me, I don't know what kind of business they're going to do. Messi, they're not messing around. They're signing Reinders, who for me is a formidable player. Uh, he's the complete midfielder, and he's a player that I would have loved that Liverpool to be. But they're signing him. Cherki is another player I really like, but of course we're getting Wirtz, who I think is the better player. But Cherki will still do really well at Man City, in my opinion. And I know they're making good acquisitions to their team. They're not just signing big profiles for the sake of it. They're signing a good sort of mixture of youth plus, I think, tactical players that will fit the way uh, Pep wants to play his football, and that's the difference between City and United. Man United just buy players on name basis. They don't really buy players that fit the way the coach wants to play. So for me, Arsenal they've got a few positions to address, in my opinion. They're definitely in the midfield. I thought it would have been Zubimendi, but he's been he's been a bit of a weird one. It doesn't look like he wants to leave anytime soon. Striker is a big one. If they get Sesko, then I wouldn't feel nervous because I don't rate him that highly. So let's see. I think it looks like Man City will be Liverpool's strongest challenges next season. Green Reaper says still no word on Man City's 115 charges if this gets pushed under the carpet. This would be disingenuous to Forest and Everton who got punished. Can I be honest with you? I think it will get uh, brushed under the carpet. It's if Man City were found guilty of those charges, it would definitely just demolish the league altogether. The integrity will be gone in terms of English football, and therefore, you've affected the whole English football model. So for me, it's something that where even if they know they're guilty, they're going to try and cover it up in some shape or form, and that might be in the form of a financial punishment. I don't know, but unfortunately, I think money talks in this day and age, and I don't think they will get charged for those. Those counts that should be, punished. But yeah, it is disingenuous to teams like Forest and Everton. Just because 'cause they're smaller teams doesn't mean they get the punishment and other teams don't. It shouldn't work like that. But fortunately, it's not an ethical world, especially in the football world. It's not how it works, unfortunately. Maddie says, "With the new signings, what would be your starting lineup?" So let's just say for scenario basis that we sign Gyökeres, because that's the only striker that I think we're strongly linked to right now. So my lineup would be Alisson in goal, Kerkez left back, Frimpong right back, Van Dijk, Konate hoping he signs a new contract extension, Alisson going back, and then I'd go for Wirtz on the left, so Boszlai in the number 10 role, and Salah on the right side, and then Gyökeres up top. That would be my team. So I think it might differ to everyone else's, but I think that would be the team that I think that has the right balance as well. Um, to be real, I think Diaz could join AC Milan. The only thing AC Milan, they wouldn't offer us a lot of money. So I hope he goes to Saudi. I think that would be the right move for him. Let's have a look. Now, in terms of the poll, we've got first, big up to everyone for voting. 77% have said Gyökeres. Wow, okay. And 23% six. Man, that is interesting. I thought it would have been the other way around. Okay. I'll come back to that poll before we close the show. So let's move on to the next rumor. Well, it's not rumor now, it's official news. So Caoimhin Kelleher has left Liverpool and signed for Brentford for 12.5 million, which rises to 18 million if you include the add-ons. My thoughts on this news, of course, Kelleher was always destined to leave. He's voiced this uh, need to, leave the club at some point to, know, go out there and become a number one because he believes he has the quality and he believes he can, go on and be in that position. And I think he's completely right. He is good enough to be a number one goalkeeper in the Premier League. And I think Brentford is actually a good club for him to be their number one as their former number 1 was Flecken, and he's just joined Bayer Leverkusen. Um, for me, the only issue about this transfer is the fee. I think we should have got twice the amount of money. 12.5 million for me is not a true valuation of Kelleher and his quality as a keeper. But maybe because he had 1 year remaining of his contract, that could have been the defining factor, and that's why we end up selling for a lesser fee in comparison to what I believe he probably, truly valued at. So, sad to see him leave. I think it was always on the cards, especially when we got the Mamardashvili deal done last summer. Um, he's been a fantastic keeper for us, of course, those 2 finals, scoring the penalty shootouts, helping us win silverware. He's played a big role for us over the years, so for me, I don't feel like we've ever had a number 2 that we can really rely on. He's always been a safe pair of hands, always stepped up to the plate, we're never called upon. So, yeah, I wish him all the best. I honestly do. I feel like he's a top keeper and deserves all the success. So, yeah, hopefully he has a great career at Brentford and not just for Brentford, but, he could probably move on and play at a high level at some point in his career. So, for me, it's a good move. They've got a good coach, they've got a good team, so he'll do really well in my opinion. Next rumour, Milos Kerkez. We already mentioned him briefly earlier on. Um, currently, it looks like we're getting closer and closer to an official announcement. The current news is that Liverpool and Bournemouth are close to agreeing a deal. I say close because it's not been fully announced, but the fee is rumored to be around that £40 million mark. Uh, my thoughts on the move, I've said it for a few months now. Kirkers for me is the guy. I've been saying Hato for large parts of the season, but the more I watch Kirkers, I feel like he just fits the way Arsenal wants to play fullback. So I feel like him and Frimpong, yeah, would be insane in our team. So I feel like he's going to be a player that really flourishes in our system. He's a young robber. Like he's got that ability in him that I feel like he's definitely going to do so well for us. And 2021, 22, the ceiling's very high for these young players. So I'm very excited about this signing. Um, and I think it will be announced very soon as well. So let's not get too stressed about it. It will happen at some point. Another player that we've been heavily linked with, and the recent rumors are suggesting that Arne Slot cut his holiday short in order to visit Turkey in the south of France to try and get the player on board with Liverpool. Me personally, when I heard this news a couple of days ago, um, I thought it was old news. I think it was taken out of context. My theory is that this could have occurred possibly 2, 3 weeks ago, when we were trying to finalize our targets for the summer. But what happened is that, Florian Wirtz became available and was very interested in signing for Liverpool. So I think we shelved our plans for Turkey in order to obtain Florian Wirtz. And I think the reason why this news has been leaked now, even though I feel like it's kind of old news, is to speed up the Wirtz deal, to show Bayer Leverkusen that, look, we have alternative targets, so we wanna get this done, as I said, as soon as possible. But look, call me crazy, but in an ideal world, I would love to see both Czech and Wirtz at Liverpool, and they can easily play together in the same team. We can have Wirtz on the left, Czech in the number 10 role would be a fantastic, uh, midfield there, or advanced midfield, in my opinion. But, coming down from cloud 9 now, I think Turkey is set to join Man City, which hurts me because I'm a big fan of player and I've been a strong advocate for the player to join Liverpool. But on the good side, um, we've got Florian Wirtz joining the club very, very soon. So, you know, that's definitely a positive player for us to look at. Um, next player that, caught my attention was Abdul Hamid Boulal. So reports in Morocco are suggesting that Liverpool are very interested in signing the young Moroccan defender. The centre back is 19 years of age, uh, but has shown some great promise for his current club, which is Rennes in Ligue 1. I've watched a couple compilations. I won't say I've watched him during the season, but from what I've seen, he's a decent player, got good speed, covers his centre back very well, decent attacker, not attacker, decent attacker of the ball in terms of distribution, strong tackler as well, can take a penalty. He's got good technique for his penalty, he can smash them in the bottom corner. But I feel like he's still very raw. If he was to be signed, it would be like a project signing for us. He wouldn't be in the first team for so soon, in my opinion. He'll be in the squad, but he'll be like 4th or 5th choice, in my opinion. So, maybe a name to look out for. I don't think there's any truth to us signing him this summer. Maybe he'll be earmarked as a future signing. But let's see if there's any legs in this rumor. As you know, this news kind of came out of nowhere, but we'll see what happens with the Morocco's defender. Next rumor is Mane Fofana. So I mentioned him very briefly earlier on, and another player linked as a possible replacement for Luis Diaz. And me personally, I rate the player. I think he's a fantastic player with great dribbling ability, great speed as well, and he's got a decent shot on him as well. I think if Luis Diaz does leave, I think this could be the type of profile that the club will try and recruit, as it won't be a huge financial gamble, and it'll be probably regarded as more of a smart investment to sign a young and up-and-coming player that has a huge potential. And the last time Leon had a winger like that, he goes by the name of Barcola. So Mane Fofana pretty much came into the team to replace him because they knew they had a top player in Fofana coming through the ranks. So for me, I would like to see this player come at Liverpool at some point. Um, Definitely want to watch, as I do believe there's genuine interest in the player, but it just depends on what happens at the club. Even Gakpo's getting linked to move away. So once we get a bit of clarity in terms of what the department is going to look like in terms of our attack, then maybe, Malik Fofana could be a potential target. But I don't know. A lot of fans would probably go for alternative targets. If we were signing a young profile type of left winger, for me, Malik Fofana would probably be top of that list. So that's my take on him. Next one, Ibrahima Konate. Now, still not up there in regards to his contract extension, but he has made some comments online that certainly hasn't sit well with the Liverpool fans, or should I say, some sections of the Liverpool fan base. The balance season now a bit strange. Um, to say out loud, considering we have Mohamed Salah, who's also challenging for a Ballon d'Or this season. Me personally, I don't think it's a big deal because you have to put context into it. Ousmane Dembele is his French teammate as well, so they're probably very good friends off the pitch. And he probably just said something in all honesty to say, "Look, my friend Ousmane Dembele's had a great season. I think he deserves to be in the running for the Ballon d'Or." I don't think he said it to hint that he's going over to PSG because that's what a lot of fans are saying, that he's off to PSG if he's rating one of their players like that. I don't think that's the case, but I really hope Konate gets a contract extension, because I've mentioned it before. If that doesn't happen in the next month or so, we have to cash in on Konate. That's something that hurts me to say out loud, but I don't want another Trent situation where, where he leaves on a free. He's a top defender. He can go on and be one of the best defenders in world football, in my opinion. So we need to make sure we get something from him and use that money to finance on another centre back in the team. So I pray and hope we do sign a contract extension. If I had to make a prediction, I think he will. So let's see what happens. Uh, Next player, Beto. So a player that had a very, very successful long spell with Middlesbrough last season championship. He's now being linked with a surprising move in the Premier League. Now, the team that is in question is no other than our noisy neighbours, and that is Everton. Now, history will dictate that Liverpool and Everton don't generally do business with each other. I think the last time they did, from my recollection, Nick Barmby went from Liverpool to Everton, as well as or was that the other way around? Everton to Liverpool, wasn't it? But in terms of from Liverpool to Everton, it was Abdul Xavier. I'm sure if you guys remember him, Portuguese player with big blonde beard and a huge afro as well. That was the last player to make the switch in the early 2000s. Um, the question is, should Liverpool consider this offer? Me personally, I'm not too sure. Um, it hugely depend on what Everton are willing to offer. As Crystal Palace was strongly linked with the player in January, and I believe they were willing to spend 30 million. So if it's upwards to that kind of fee, then I'm all for it. We can do business. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I don't see Everton, you know, as rivals in terms of challenging for honours or anything like that. So him going over to Everton doesn't affect how Liverpool conduct themselves going forward, if that makes sense. So, but look, if they're willing to pay over the odds slightly for a player, then I'm all for it, to be honest with you. Um, now, let's just paint a scenario here. If this deal was to materialize, this could potentially open the forbidden door, I guess, for more business between the two clubs. And if that is the case, there is one player in the Everton's team that I would suggest could be a great fit for Liverpool, and that's Gerard Brentford. Now, the young centre back has had a fantastic season, and whenever I've seen him play, he's looked very, very impressive. He's a no-nonsense type of defender, very dominant in the air, great ball playing ability as well with both feet. He could be an interesting signing for Liverpool. I've also heard that he's actually a boyhood Med as well. Maybe we can convince him to make the move across the road. But let's see, what happens with the Ben Doak deal. The Brentford one, I don't know if there's any sort of inkling for that move to happen. I know we were linked to him last summer, and I believe he had a release clause as well, but maybe that release clause isn't active anymore. Uh, but what I can say regarding Brentford is that there is a lot of speculation, as a lot of teams have shown interest in signing the likes of Tottenham, Newcastle, Chelsea, Manchester United, just to name a few. So much so that I think everything already expected, to see Bradley depart this summer. They've already earmarked Burnley defender, Maxime Esteve as his potential replacement. So he might not be joining Liverpool, but I can see him leaving Everton at some point. So let's see what happens. He's definitely going to be a name that, is mentioned quite a bit in the rumor mill. And that's the last rumor. I'm just going to go through some of the comments before we close the show. Grim Reaper with the Darwin. And Grim Reaper says, if Kerkez joins, who will be sold, Robert or Simicast? I think it will be Simicast. I think Robertson still holds a strong position in the squad in terms of his leadership and in terms of his influence within sort of the squad as one of the, I guess, the most experienced players. Because if you look at our squad, we're quite a young squad. So Simicast, I think he's a good player. Whenever called upon, offers a good sort of ability to the team. But I think he's kind of just hit a before now where he's not able to cement a starting place in the team. And this season would have been the time because from his standards, Robertson was quite poor, and he could have, overlapped him and made himself that number one left back. But he hasn't. So for me, that indicates that Arsenal doesn't think he's good enough to be our starting left back for Liverpool. And I think Kirkis has the quality or has the potential to be our number one left back. So therefore, I think Tsimikas will be the left back that departs this summer. Rui says Trent Alexander-Arnold was told he couldn't drive his Range Rover to the Madrid training ground because they were BMW, so he has to drive a BMW. I saw that earlier on today. I also saw a video where it was a car dealer and he was trying to help sell that car months ago. So that dealer kind of knew that that man was happening before many of us did. So yeah, crazy, crazy world. But that's his problem now. Uh, Rajib Benting says, Aussie, great show. You've got good football knowledge, anyways. Uh, do do you think we need a natural DM or can Gravenberch carry on playing there? And what do you think of Ederson of Atalanta? Firstly, thank you for your compliment. I appreciate your kind words in terms of my football knowledge. In terms of the requirement of a natural DM, I don't want a sort of an enforcer type of midfielder, not someone that just, you know, is your traditional number six and there's tackles and all that sort of stuff. I want a complete player that kind of is in the mold of Gravenberch, but can do more as well, can be a playmaker of the team in a deeper position. I think Gravenberch will still be one of the first names in our midfield. The only thing is I think he was overused a lot last season, and we need to rotate. So we need to find adequate quality in our midfield, and that way, you can rotate between Gravenberch and the new midfielder, but they can also form a partnership if required. So that third midfielder with Gravenberch, McAllister, and the new midfielder, I think will be the core of our midfield. That's what we need. Jones, for me, can do a great job there as well. But I think Jones will have the opportunity to play a bit more further up as well. As potentially as backup force to both sides, especially with Harvey Elliott leaving. And then you've got Endo and possibly Bastage being in the mix as a squad player next season as well. So I feel like we need one midfielder to come in to play that defensive midfield role. In terms of who I think of Edison wouldn't be classified as a number six to me, but he would be a good addition to our squad as a playing the double pivot. But the way the team is set up, I don't know if we're going to play a double pivot midfield as much. I think it's going to be a slight alteration where I think it will be more of a single pivot where the number six drops deep in between the two centre backs, and then you've got your two box to box, your McAllister and Szoboszlai playing, deep at times to be playmakers, but in on the counter, being a bit more further up. And then you have the likes of Wirtz having a bit more of a free roll from the left hand side, and then you've got Salah having more freedom to go inside, allowing Frimpong and Kerkez to really bomb forward. I think that's going to be the setup. So for me, that adds a good balance to our team. Ederson could probably do that role, but I think Ederson would be more of a McAllister cover rather than Groundwork. So I think he doesn't fit that profile in my opinion. Although I do rate Ederson, I think he's a fantastic player. I think we just need to get maybe a different profile to be a backup for Groundwork. But if he was to be the player, I wouldn't be against him. I do rate Ederson. Look for Goals TV says we almost signed Osimhen in January. The reason why the deal did not go through is because of payments Napoli owed him. I did hear this. I don't know if there was any truth to it, but if that is the case, then there's definitely interest in the player. So who knows? Double D mentioned earlier on that the deal or the talks between Al Hilal and Osimhen has broken down. Maybe we're in the mix there. Who knows? Let's see. And that's also why Nunes almost left. Yeah, the Nunes part I know because I don't know who we were targeting. I think Osimhen was the name that was earmarked, but I knew Nunes was very close to leaving, but we just couldn't find an adequate replacement. So it makes sense if that is the truth. But does that mean we go again? Who knows? Let's see what happens. Maya says, if you start Milos Kerkez straight away, then what would you do, Andrew Robertson? For me, Andrew Robertson will still have an important role in the squad. He'll be rotated with Kerkez. I think Kerkez won't be, first choice every single week. There'll be some games where maybe we need Robertson for his experience because this season, whenever he's been rotated or Simic has been given a game or two, he's always looked fresh whenever he's returned. Over the years, he's played week in, week out, and he's been burnt out. So I feel like, you know, Robertson is still a good defender despite what sometimes will tell you. I just feel like due to, the way he's played over the years and, being heavily called upon to play week in, week out, I think he just took the toll on his body. I feel like, playing under less pressure and being rotated a little bit more, I feel like you'll see good performances from Robertson going forward. So he still plays a big part in the team, in my opinion. And Liverpool Goals TV says Osimhen also stated about 2 weeks ago that, uh, he's not going to Saudi, his preference is EPL. Well, that's music to my ears right there, so let's see. I would not mind Osimhen. I think Osimhen is a fantastic striker. He's a striker that scores all types of goals. I've seen him score bicycle kicks, tap-ins, headers, all sorts, so for me, he's the complete striker. I would not be against signing Osimhen at all. Um, and that's the last one, and I'm just going to check the poll. So I can see 18 people voted. Big up yourself for voting. And look, Gyökeres is still the number one choice with 72%, and you've got Austria with 28%. So everyone seems to be team Gyökeres right now. So let's see what happens. Um, it's an interesting one. Those are the two I feel like would be realistic targets for Liverpool. Whether it happens or not remains to be seen. Because I thought possibly on Sunday Tuesday, but let's see what happens. Uh, GTV Football Channel, big up my brother, big up G. Thank you for your comment, thank you for tuning in, guys. Please make sure to subscribe to GTV Football Channel. G does some fantastic content. I feel like he's doing content every day, but it's really good content in terms of not just Liverpool. It's more, if you're a real football fan, it'll give you player profiles and analysis of certain games and certain teams. So really good football channel. So yeah, big up to G as always. And another comment from Liverpool Goals TV says, about another 5 minutes and that video will uploaded. Be sure to check out. I would definitely check out. Big up yourself, Liverpool Goals TV. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me give everyone a shout that's been involved today. Shout out to Mazzy, Azrak, Ozan Kabak, Double D, Bemba, Rajan Penting, Ready Steady Cook, Liverpool Goals TV, Abdul Rahim, Grim Reaper. Who else do we have? We've got GTV on the channel, of course. So yeah, big up for everyone for sending your comments and engaging with the discussion today. Appreciate your support as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, in terms of upcoming content, I'm planning on doing a show next week where I'm going to pretend like I'm Richard Hughes, where I'm gonna name the players that I feel like should be sold, players that should be bought, but not just names. It's going to be done in a more of a financial way. So I'm going to try and balance the books because as Liverpool fans, we've had to, develop accounting skills over the years. So I'm gonna put that to the screen and present what I would do in that scenario and try and do it as realistic as possible. Of course, there's certain players we don't know their true transfer valuation, but try and do it as realistic as I can. And feel free to get involved. Let me know your suggestions and let me know what you would do in that situation. And then I'll also do another transfer talk show, probably same time this week on Thursday or Friday. Um, if there's any news developments regards to players being signed or Liverpool being in talks with players, there will be impromptu shows. So of course I can't schedule that sort of stuff. But if there is any breaking news, uh, rest assured that I will try and go live and we can discuss it together. Yeah, hopefully, we'll get some deals made official in the coming days, and yeah, we'll have a lot to cheer about. So hopefully, we'll have some new impromptu shows next week regarding Kerkez and Wirtz. That would be a nice way to wrap up the week. So yeah, best thing to do is hit that notification bell so you know what time I'm doing the stream or what time I plan to go live on the day. And yeah, feel free to get involved in the comments. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon.